Farouk. Tonight, the Leafs will try to shake their nearly two-decade-old demons and win a playoff series.
The fourth win is always the toughest.
Obviously the hardest one to get.
I really just think the biggest thing for us is to just focus on going out and playing a good hockey game.
We're live at Scotiabank Arena as the Leafs and Lightning get ready for puck drop in an hour. And
love to be able to provide a date.
We're building infrastructure here for the next 100, 150 years, and we've got to get it right.
Improperly laid track, just one of the dozens of issues delaying completion of the Eglinton Crosstown Transit Project. Plus,
I like the paper bags.
That's good for the environment. I don't mind it.
It's a fantastic move, mostly because paper is actually a lot worse for the environment than the single-use plastic bag.
Get ready to bring your own bag to the LCBO as the liquor retailer announces it's phasing out paper. Good evening. It is Game 5 for the Toronto Maple Leafs tonight. They are just one win away from advancing past the first round for the first time since 2004. But can they close the series? Our Greg Ross joins us live again tonight from Maple Leaf Square, where many anxious fans have gathered to watch the game. Greg, tonight they're hoping to see something they've never seen before, likely.
No doubt. I mean, I've been here for just about every game, Maribel, and I can tell you the crowds here have been very, very young, meaning that most of the people here are either too young to remember the last time or they weren't even born yet, like 18-year-old Amin here, who's never seen the Leafs advance past the first round of the playoffs, which happened last in 2004. And so you can imagine there's a lot of excitement, there's a lot of buzz, fans are ready to celebrate. It's something that was talked about amongst the players this morning who were saying it's important to keep their focus on the game and not let all of this be a distraction.
You're obviously aware, I think, you know, the special fan base we have and the following, the history and tradition with the team and why everyone is so excited about this time of year.
Leafs captain John Tavares says it's hard not to notice the excitement in the city right now.
Giordano sends it.
But he says it's important that players don't get too caught up in it.
Honestly, just try as best you can to try to approach it like every other game. Obviously, you're aware of the circumstances and where they're at, but, you know, I think you just feel good about working for this opportunity and being excited about getting out there and competing.
4 straight goals.
Well, I really just think the biggest thing for us is to just focus on going out and playing a good hockey game. You know, we're a good hockey team. We've won lots of games. We found ways to win games in this series. I think anytime we get outside of focusing on that is where all these other things start to creep in that don't help us here today.
The Leafs haven't forgotten who they're up against in this series. The Lightning eliminated the Leafs last year and have played in 3 straight Stanley Cup finals, winning 2 of them. A win for them tonight gets them right back into the series.
You know, the fourth win is always the toughest. And again, like I said, these guys aren't going to go away. They're a very good team. They've won back-to-back Stanley Cups for a reason.
Giordano with the shot, and right there.
Obviously the hardest one to get, especially the opponent that we're up against and the challenge that presents.
Yeah, and the challenge for these fans out here is to try and exercise some of those past demons that have kept the Leafs from advancing past the first round of the playoffs. Young Amin here that we were talking about earlier has brought this giant cut out of Drake's head. Why?
The Drake curse is going to end tonight. I've been saving this in my basement for the last couple of years because I think today is going to be the chance that this Drake curse ends. The Drake curse is a curse where whatever team Drake supports, they end up losing. I think it's going to end today.
Except for the Raptors, of course, because they won in 2019. But talk about bringing good luck charms. This is Mark Farah. Has one of the biggest collections, maybe the biggest collection of Maple Leaf memorabilia of anybody. And you brought some good luck charms. You're going inside the game tonight. And these are pretty incredible good luck charms. Let's start with this one in your left hand there. That puck right there, what is that?
So that is the goal puck that Bill Barocco would score the game-winning goal with in 1951 to continue the first dynasty in Toronto Maple Leaf history and the biggest goal in Toronto Maple Leaf history, period.
Yeah, so if you remember the song 50 Mission Cap by the Tragically Hip, the last goal he ever scored won the Leafs the cup. That's the puck that he scored that goal with. They didn't win another until 1962 because we all know the tragedy of Bill Barocco. And yes, That is the very puck that he ripped out of a trophy. It was sitting in a trophy. You pulled the puck out, brought it with you, but that's not the only good luck charm you have with you. What else do you have?
No, I brought a Stanley Cup ring from, this is a 4-year cup ring, so it would be 62, 63, 64, and 67. So players would get that for each one. We got to bring the Demons and put them away tonight. Why not do it any better than bringing the two of the best teams in Toronto Maple Leaf history to smash these guys out of the building tonight?
First thing you got to notice about this ring is they come a lot bigger these days when you win a championship, and you get one for every championship. This is for 4 different championships, but no doubt the Leafs want to get another one of those. They've got a long way to go. First step, get past the first round of the playoffs, and they have a chance to do that tonight. How excited are you guys about that possibility?
Hey, very excited. As Greg was saying, it's a young crowd today, but that means good energy, right? So the square is going to be very hyped today. I can't wait. I
gotta tell you, Maribel, we're also giving Amin here a history lesson. He learned about Bill Barocco just minutes ago, and he's very excited. He's like, how have I never heard this? Now he knows.
And It didn't sound real to me. I still don't believe it. It's amazing. It's incredible, and it makes me more proud as a Leafs fan to know that that's our history.
Yeah, what a fairy tale that is, and the Leafs can make more history tonight just by getting past the first round of the playoffs. There will be a celebration on the streets of Toronto, Maribel.
I love that we're passing those special memories on down through those generations, Greg. Thank you so much. And Hockey Night in Canada gets underway right after our show. That's at 7 p.m. Our Leafs can clinch this series with a win, and you can watch it all right here on CBC television. Look, Delia, they don't care what the weather is. It could be freezing cold out there. I think that energy is just going to keep them going.
Lucky for now, they still have a little bit of sunshine on their side. Temperature will slowly drop tonight, but for now, they're going to enjoy it. It's going to be great. I know the other day it felt like end of winter, although it was the end of April, but now it's really starting to feel like end of April, more of those spring-like conditions. We're going to have a little bit of cloud coverage tonight, but it'll start to clear up as well. But then tomorrow, really going to see more of that rainfall. So some chance of showers throughout the day, especially picking up around noon. And then the weekend, it's more of a damp one. That's what we're expecting. Currently, it is 11 degrees in Toronto. We are still sitting a little bit below seasonal temperatures, but not as bad as it was the past few days when it was feeling a little frosty out there. We won't be seeing any rain tonight. Look at that, clear skies. We have that high pressure system, and going into Friday as well, same thing. We're going to see a little bit of that cloud coverage starting to peak through at around 1 o'clock. And like I said, that rainfall really starting to kick in at around 3:30 and carrying on through the rest of the night on Friday. So if you had any plans outdoors, you might want to bring them indoors for tomorrow night. So 6 degrees for tonight. Those Leafs fans, they're going to have a great night outside. And then tomorrow, bring back those umbrellas. Maribel?
Okay, we'll check back with you in a bit, Delia. Thanks.
Thanks, Maribel.
The head of Metrolinx says some of the track that was put down for the Eglinton Crosstown LRT was not done to specifications. That's one of apparently hundreds of quality control issues keeping the transit line from completion. And tonight, there's no clear answer on when it will open. Lorenda Redekop has the latest.
Crews are ripping out the platform at Sloan Stop. It's one of the planned LRT stops along the Eglinton Crosstown. According to Metrolinx, the concrete was uneven and they have to redo it, meaning a month of repairs before the line even opens. But there are other issues.
In 2021, the track work was completed. It's outside of specification, though, and it needs to be rectified. And despite our urging and our guidance, it's only being rectified now.
He blamed Crosslinks Transit Solutions. It's a consortium of 4 companies doing the design and construction. He says the consequences without a fix are huge.
The risk you have is that a train runs and actually climbs up on the track and derails. So the degree of accuracy that we're talking about are literally millimeters.
He says Crosslinks, or CTS, has 260 quality control issues, and that he's long questioned the company's projected completion date of late this year. Last December, CBC reported on confidential documents showing a lack of a credible plan to complete the line. The transportation minister used similar language today, still unable to say when trains will be running.
I would love to be able to provide a date, but that is contingent upon CTS delivering a credible schedule to Metrolinx.
The Eglinton Crosstown P3 was supposed to open in 2020, then 2021, then 2022, and then 2023.
The opposition accused the government of losing control of the project.
Am I frustrated? Darn right I'm frustrated.
This afternoon, the Premier shifted some of the blame to the previous Liberal government, in power when construction began.
Folks, this is a project we inherited, and it's been taking way too long.
People who live near Eglinton just want answers and transit that works.
It's just a nightmare. It's taking longer to do this than it takes to rebuild Notre Dame Cathedral, and I'm fed up with it.
Crosslinks will be on the hook for the cost of the repairs, according to Metrolinx. The government says in the future it plans to break up projects into smaller contracts to hopefully decrease delays. Lorenda Redicomp, CBC News, Toronto.
Premier Doug Ford announcing changes to the bail system today, including funding to police for bail compliance teams. Ali Chiasson has that story.
Our members have stopped referring to the court and prison system as a revolving door. For them and for the communities they serve, it no longer feels like the door is revolving, but instead that it is simply wide open.
The room was packed with police and media at 42 Division to hear about the Ford government's plan to beef up bail compliance.
We can't have a justice system that fails to protect innocent people, a justice system where bad guys are allowed to run free, a justice system that has an open door policy where violent criminals are arrested one day and let back out on the streets the next day.
While the very next day may be an exaggeration, there are high-profile cases where a person on bail reoffends with escalating violence. Slain OPP officer Greg Pirshawa was checking on a vehicle in a ditch near Hagersville in December when he was shot and killed. The alleged killer was on bail for an assault charge a year prior.
From the perspective of being a police officer, it's very demoralizing. It's disheartening. We arrest someone and then they're released on bail and not following their conditions, and a member is injured. It feels that it's not for anything.
It has to stop, and we'll make sure it stops.
Today, the Premier announced $112 million in new funding. $24 million will be spent over the next 3 years for police services to establish bail compliance teams. The OPP gets $48 million to create their own that focuses on high-risk offenders at large. And $26 million goes towards creating bail teams within the court system. The rest could be spent on technology that monitors offender compliance and to create a framework to share that information across jurisdictions.
We can't keep using jail as a stopgap measure for our own social failings.
University of Windsor law professor Donardo Jones says it's not the justice system that needs more funding, but addiction and mental health services, noting some repeat offenders aren't always capable of complying.
These programs are chronically underfunded or non-existent. Well, what are we doing? We're setting these people up for failure.
Today wasn't about addressing root causes, but law and order to the tune of tens of millions of dollars for
more boots on the ground. And we're making sure the most dangerous criminals are locked up behind bars.
Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
2 more teen girls charged with second-degree murder in connection with the swarming death of a homeless man in Toronto have been granted bail. The 2 girls cannot be named under the Youth Criminal Justice Act. They were released on bail yesterday after hearings in a Toronto youth court. One of the girls was released with conditions and will be staying with grandparents in another part of the province. A second girl was also released. Both girls had previously been denied bail. In all, 8 teen girls ranging in age from 13 to 16 have been charged with second-degree murder in connection with the incident last December. 59-year-old Ken Lee died in hospital after he was allegedly beaten and stabbed by a group of girls near a downtown homeless shelter where he was a resident. Only one of the girls remains in custody. Police have charged a woman in connection with a fatal crash in Rexdale. The collision happened last Wednesday night near the intersection of Albion and Finch. Police say the crash happened after the driver of one of the 4 vehicles involved lost control. 65-year-old Hazela Baksh was killed. She was on her way home from Ramadan prayers when her vehicle was struck. 2 other women were taken to hospital with serious injuries. A 38-year-old unlicensed driver is now facing a number of charges in the crash, including dangerous operation of a vehicle causing death and 2 counts of impaired operation of a vehicle causing death. A CBC Toronto investigation has revealed allegations of fraud being leveled against a GTA developer. Stateview Homes is being sued for hundreds of millions of dollars by its bank and lenders. And there are concerns about whether hundreds of buyers will ever get to move into their new homes. Ryan Patrick Jones has the details.
Stateview Homes is an award-winning builder specializing in single-family houses like these almost completed townhomes in Markham. It's currently planning 1,400 homes across the GTA and as far north as Barrie. Many are under construction, with homes already sold and buyers waiting for them to be built. But the company is running into some serious legal and financial hurdles. TD Bank has filed a lawsuit against Stateview Homes, the 2 brothers who head the company, Carlo and Dino Tarasi, as well as other executives and associated companies. The bank alleges the defendants cashed thousands of bad checks between April 2022 and last month, resulting in what TD calls an unauthorized overdraft in excess of $37 million. Stateview Homes blames its former chief financial officer, Daniel Ciccone, saying in a statement, the situation was perpetrated solely at the hands of Stateview's former chief financial officer. Dino and Carlo Tarasi had no knowledge or participation and were quick to remove the CFO from his position. A proposed settlement shows the defendants have agreed to pay back the money by July, but in the meantime, TD is taking some of the developer's projects as collateral, including this one in Whitchurch Stouffville, part of this one in Markham, as well as luxury homes and ski chalets belonging to Stateview's president and CEO. And the trouble doesn't end there. Several Stateview lenders say they learned of the TD lawsuit and have since filed separate court actions of their own. The latest, filed today, alleging Stateview missed recent interest payments and improperly diverted funds. In total, lenders are demanding Stateview repay more than $190 million in loans and are asking the court to appoint a receiver to take control of 4 unfinished housing projects, including this one behind me in Markham. So what does this all mean for buyers? Stateview is hoping to reassure them, posting this statement to its website yesterday, denying rumors that it's going bankrupt and pledging to complete all projects under construction. But that could be out of their hands, depending on how these court cases play out. Ryan Patrick Jones, CBC News, Toronto.
More women are entering skilled construction trades in Ontario, but many are saying sexism still plays a huge role in how they're treated on job sites. Some are taking matters into their own hands, forming groups that help empower women, while others say the industry needs more male leaders to stand up to discrimination. Patrick Swadden has that story.
Rita Swift is a carpenter currently working on site in Hamilton, and the province needs more women like her working in skilled trades. Ontario faces a dire labor shortage and wants typically underrepresented groups to join the industry. But some women say there are still barriers in construction, wage disparity, sexism, and even sometimes harassment.
Inappropriate comments, inappropriate touching. These things have happened, do happen. Both myself and every other woman that I've met that works in the construction trades has dealt with that.
Swift says it was difficult to land an apprenticeship when she was just starting. She had to work a second job just to support herself and wasn't making as much as her male colleagues.
There's the idea that you can't lift as much, that you're not as capable. I think it's wrong because there's lots of men that can't do it.
Swift recently joined a nonprofit called Women on Site. It was co-founded by Samara Sampson, a Red Seal journey person who's worked in sheet metal for 7 years. She hopes it will empower women through community building.
Even though there are more and more women getting into this, it still feels very unwelcoming.
The group has monthly drop-ins, as well as 3 major events planned for later in the year. It helps women and other underrepresented groups network and receive mentorship.
We found the camaraderie that we've been missing, and we don't feel that isolation when we're together.
But others in the industry say more needs to happen.
We have to get the
owners of companies to buy into this. We're not going to get anywhere unless we have the buy-in from our male allies.
Pullen says there are still wage disparities and other issues plaguing the industry, like lack of proper equipment for women or site facilities designed just for men. And that's why Sampson wants women on site to continue expanding.
It's not a matter of we can do it anymore. It's we are doing it. We're here. We're doing these jobs, and there's a place for you.
Patrick Swadden, CBC News, Toronto.
The city's Planning and Housing Committee made recommendations to help permit multiplexes in all neighborhoods to support building new homes for people.
You have to work this problem backwards. I want to create 100% affordable housing. How do I make the built form math work to deliver that within the provincial and federal financial constraints we have today? You want 100% affordable rental? You need to throw out a whole bunch of city planning and urban design guidelines, which are treated like they're cast in stone.
A city staff report going before the committee today recommends amendments to the city's official plan and citywide zoning bylaw. This would allow the development of multiplexes, low-rise housing with 2, 3, or 4 units in a single building in all neighborhoods. The changes would permit more housing in all low-rise neighborhoods in keeping with the style of existing homes. This is one part of the city's housing action plan, which looks to increase the supply of housing within communities and help them thrive. Mayoral candidate Mark Saunders campaigned in Etobicoke today, outlining his plans for bike lanes in the city.
The city has already spent over $75 million on bike lanes and will spend $30 million on bike lanes by the end of this year. Bike lanes were a political decision, not a logical one.
Saunders says he's not anti-bike, but he has no intention of putting bike lanes on Toronto's busiest streets. He plans on deprioritizing projects like the Bloor Street West bike lane expansion, but says he is willing to work with council to reduce congestion on major roads. Saunders was joined by Councillor Stephen Holyday, who endorsed him for Mayor of Toronto. Public service workers took their strike to Pearson Airport today.
Our lives have been disrupted by the federal government, and it's time for them to feel some disruptions themselves. It's embarrassing what's going on, right? We want to go back to work. We want to be back at work, and that's what our members have been saying.
Members of the Public Service Alliance of Canada set up a picket line outside Terminal 1 departures area. The union says it's stepping up pressure on the federal government to settle the strike. More than 150,000 workers walked off the job April 19th. The government has offered them a 9% raise spread out over 3 years. The union had been asking for 13.5%, but has since lowered that demand. They're also asking for a remote work policy in their next contract. Observers say no matter what, the Public Service Alliance of Canada strike will cost Ottawa billions, putting the government under more pressure to rein in spending. Guy Kenville explains why.
Federal public servants on strike are hitting the streets again today, day 9 of this historic labor dispute. No signs of just when the negotiations will end. What's clear is that the Public Service Alliance of Canada insists the Treasury Board's offer of a 3% a year raise is unacceptable.
They still have 9% on the table over 3 years. And they're telling us that we have to move. That's not how bargaining works, Madame Fortier.
Wherever the number falls, though, critics say the government will have to take a hard look at the size of its workforce. The Treasury Board had initially estimated the cost of the union's wage demand at more than $3 billion in extra spending per year. But that doesn't take into account that CRA workers are demanding even more.
It will be a benchmark settlement. So all other bargaining groups are going to look at this and say it'll be effectively become a floor in their negotiations.
Experts say the final settlement will set the tone for many other bargaining units that are still negotiating their own contracts. The current Parliamentary Budget Officer's own estimate shows if everyone across the federal public service gets a 4.5% yearly raise, it would cost taxpayers nearly $20 billion more over 5 years.
larger spending is not justified. Government needs to reduce the spending and make sure that they reduce their deficit. And the reason is that following this period of time, we might face another recession, and the government needs to be prepared for that.
Critics have long pointed to the swelling federal bureaucracy as an obvious place for cuts. Some 30,000 jobs were added to the federal public service over the last 2 years. And if layoff decisions are made based on seniority over merit, those hired during the COVID-19 pandemic could be among the first to go. Guy Kenville, CBC News, Ottawa.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was in New York City today. This morning, he co-chaired a UN task force on sustainable development. He's signaling Ottawa's commitment to deal with global issues, including women's rights. But some advocates say the Trudeau government needs to walk the talk as well. David Thurton reports.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau urging a united front at the United Nations.
None of us is alone in this, and none of us can imagine that if we take care of ourselves, we'll make it through. That's not true anymore.
Justin Trudeau and the Barbados Prime Minister both advocates for the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, including for climate change, clean water, and ending extreme poverty by 2030, meeting today at the halfway mark for achieving those targets.
Halftime is a time for reflection, a time to summon the energy to go again.
While the leaders spoke in New York, in Ottawa, Canada's International Development Minister announced nearly $200 million over 5 years for women's rights organizations abroad.
Today's announcement is a recommitment of our government's unapologetic stance to be feminist.
It's a little bit hypocritical.
Such announcements ring hollow among some international aid advocates who note this year's budget had nearly $1 billion foreign aid shortfall.
You can't be the champion of the developing world and then cut foreign aid by 15% for the developing world.
But Ottawa's ambassador in Washington disagrees Canada isn't doing enough.
I don't think Canada has anything to feel defensive about in terms of our participation and support internationally for development and for assistance, whether it's Haiti, Ukraine.
The United Nations warns that the window for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals is slipping from our grasp, with only 12% of the targets on track. Its Secretary General warns that it could become an epitaph for a world that might have been. David Thurton, CBC News, New York.
Dozens of governments have been scrambling to pull their citizens out of Sudan. Canada now says it has carried out its first 2 evacuation flights as the East African country continues to spiral into further violence. Evan Dyer shows us the uncertainty facing many who are stranded and trying to get out.
Hundreds of Canadians remain stranded in the country awaiting evacuation. Today, a government source told CBC 2 Canadian Forces Hercules brought 44 Canadians out of an airbase just north of Khartoum to Djibouti, as well as American, Sudanese, Djiboutian, Japanese, and British evacuees. A Canadian Forces Airbus carried people from Djibouti to Marseille, France. In Khartoum, people rushed to buy food. But this store owner has already run out of some staples and says he expects to run out of food entirely in 4 or 5 days. This man was able to find a pharmacy that was open and had his blood pressure medication in stock. But the pharmacist says no new medicine is entering the country and his stock is quickly running low. Also worrying for Canadians trying to get evacuated, there's no fuel available. The Canadian Forces are using Wadi Saidna Air Base in Omdurman, normally less than an hour's drive from Khartoum, but since the war began, people have been taking up to 8 hours to reach it. Now, both Sudanese and foreigners remaining in the country are bracing for fighting to resume. These Nigerian students say their government has abandoned them.
The evacuation is poorly equipped, poorly organized, and the students are here stranded for the past 4 days. There is no access to food, no access to clean water, no electricity, nothing.
The students say the Rapid Support Force militia has taken up positions around their university, effectively using the foreign students as a human shield to discourage airstrikes. As the current ceasefire drew to a close, the Sudanese army had agreed to extend it for another 72 hours, potentially buying a few extra days for people to get out. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Ottawa.
The LCBO is asking customers to BYOB, bring your own bag, that is. The Liquor Corporation is phasing out paper bags. Inconvenient for some, maybe, but environmentalists say it's a positive step forward. Meg Roberts has more.
If you're heading to the LCBO, you're going to have to start bringing your own bag. That's unless you want to pay for a reusable one. The LCBO says they're phasing out single-use paper bags in the coming months.
I like the paper bags. I like the paper bags.
That's good for the environment. I don't mind it.
This is just another way for them to make money, I reckon.
The provincial agency says the move will reduce operational costs, but says this initiative was focused around the environment. The LCBO declined an interview with CBC Toronto, but said in a press release the initiative will remove roughly 135 million paper bags annually from its stores and will save the equivalent of more than 188,000 trees every year. The CEO said the removal of single-use paper bags is another important step in our efforts to minimize our impact on the environment.
I think it's a fantastic move.
This York University environmental professor says despite so many companies switching from plastic to paper, paper can be even worse for the environment. That's because those paper bags can end up in the landfill instead of being recycled.
Plastic doesn't break down and doesn't decompose, which poses its own issues in terms of environmental sustainability, but paper will break down. And when paper breaks down, it releases methane, which is a 10 times more powerful GHG emitter relative to carbon.
The LCBO says it will still hand out free reused cardboard boxes. However, a 6-bottle and large reusable bag will cost about $3.
Problem is when we have too many of them.
Environmentalists say reusable bags are only helpful if they are being reused, but there are other solutions companies can be considering, like a reusable, returnable bag system.
Customers take the bags they need, they return them when they come back, they get sanitized and used again. And that's the best kind of reuse system.
The announcement comes 15 years after the LCBO trashed plastic bags. Meg Roberts, CBC News, Toronto.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh met with Amalgamated Transit Union Canada this morning to discuss safety on public transit.
We need to have an emergency operating fund in place to secure the number of staffing so that people aren't afraid to be at night on transit for workers that are on transit. You know, the president asked a question of about 10 or 15 workers. He asked how many workers had experienced some form of violence. Every single person raised their hand.
The leader of the NDP also called for an additional 3 steps to address public safety on the TTC, creating a national task force to develop strategies to focus on worker and passenger safety, emergency funding for shelters, homelessness and mental health. Singh also called on telecommunication companies to bring cell service to subway stations. A number of Toronto politicians were in Ottawa today trying to stop a move to eliminate the federal riding of Don Valley East.
I have been given 3 minutes today to make my case at a standing committee at the House of Commons. And this is the only opportunity that I've been given. And my community itself has been given no opportunity to speak to this issue. The fact that we can arrive at this point where a riding is eliminated and community members are not allowed a say shows the inherent flaw in the process.
Michael Cotto represents Don Valley East in the federal government. He was joined by Don Valley East MPP Adil Shamji and Toronto City Councillor Lily Cheng. They're asking Ottawa not to cut the Don Valley East riding. In February, the Federal Electoral Boundaries Commission for Ontario tabled plans to the province's federal ridings. The commission cited disparities in the sizes of Toronto's current 25 ridings. The plan is to cut Don Valley East and have its population absorbed into a number of surrounding ridings. So you're saying we should keep the umbrellas close by for the rest of the week?
Yes, and Maribel, you probably haven't seen me do this in a while, so I'm bringing these back because today was the day to have the sunglasses on, and we will be trading these in for the umbrellas. I know we haven't had our chance to really wear sunglasses in a while. Today was the day to do it with that high-pressure system that was moving in across the province and gave us mainly those clear skies and the sunshine that we saw. But we will be swapping in our sunglasses for the umbrella tomorrow and for the rest of the weekend as well. It is currently 11 degrees in Toronto. We are sitting just a bit below the average high. Usually this time of year would be 14 degrees. And well, today the high has been 12 degrees. So quite a nice, lovely day outside. And we're going to see that kind of slowly pinning down and becoming a little bit cooler over the next few days with that rain, because that low pressure system is making its way back across the province, giving us those cooler temperatures and those cloudy conditions. So if we take a look here, the clouds start to move in tomorrow in the morning, so on your commute to work, and then we start to see those showers slowly picking in from southwestern Ontario, making its way into Toronto and the GTA. Friday overnight. It's really going to last until then. So if you had any plans outdoor for the weekend, you might want to reel it in and bring it indoors, because you'll need to stay dry that way. Now, Saturday, 10 a.m. as well, still that rainfall sticking around, and really we're going to see that until Sunday as well. Also a really windy one today, and we're going to see more of that on Saturday and tomorrow. So tonight temperature, or tomorrow, it'll be 41 kilometers an hour. Winds will be gusting quite strongly, and we're going to see continuing of those strong winds over the weekend as well. Now, what to expect overnight tonight? Temperatures will drop to 6 degrees, partially cloudy, and pretty much same thing across the board. St. Catharines, Markham, Oshawa, and Hamilton, a little bit on the cooler side, 4 degrees, but still overall wonderful conditions. But like I said, there is that stretch of gray, gloomy conditions over the weekend and as we head into next week as well. Maribel?
Okay, Delia, thank you.
Thanks.
Controversial American talk show host Jerry Springer has died. In a statement, his family says he passed away peacefully at his home in Chicago. Springer was born in the UK and grew up in the United States. He worked as a lawyer, journalist, actor, and was even the mayor of Cincinnati, Ohio in the late 70s. He's best known, though, for his syndicated Shock TV-style talk show, which was often ruckus and wild. The Jerry Springer Show had a 27-year run. Springer was diagnosed with cancer a few months ago. He was 79 years old. Contraband items getting past the prison gates has always posed a challenge for authorities. And the smuggling has kept up to date with the latest technology, specifically involving drones. Banit Braish reports.
This is, in the last 3 to 5 years, has become insane. It's absolutely insane.
This was found crashed by the Matsqui prison in Abbotsford.
So what do you think makes this similar to ones that you've seen?
Well, it's the tape, so you can see that they've got tape covering any sort of lights on the drone itself to make sure to conceal its identity. You can see on the bottom here that this is obviously some sort of device that the package was probably hooked onto to drop it. Here in the Pacific region, we're seeing multiple a week between our 9 institutions, but across the country, there are multiple a day.
Last year, Randall says at the Matsqui prison, a single drop carrying fentanyl killed 1 person, saw 9 inmates overdose and taken to the emergency room, and 39 others needing medical support. This drone package was found with 13 ounces of crystal meth last fall.
It had a street value of around $7,800, and because of the supply and demand at the time, institutional value was around $180,000. Crystal meth getting into our institutions is extremely scary for everybody.
Items like that are causing debt among inmates to increase, not to mention more violence, made worse by weapons being dropped too. Hacksaw blades and ceramic knives, to name a few, also cell phones. In 2019, Corrections Services Canada committed to spending $6 million to install drone detection technology in 6 prisons, but the union says there are huge delays.
So to your knowledge, how many of the prisons have the new technology fully operating since 2019?
None. So far, they are installing the one in Donnacona, and we are still waiting for the tests.
Corrections won't say how many prisons have the technology. It says sharing their techniques to combat the introduction of contraband could create security vulnerabilities. It says we are currently working with different vendors on various methods for detecting drones. We will measure the performance of these systems and determine the potential for broader national deployment.
This camera can detect drones from pixels.
Meanwhile, this BC company, BlueVec Technology, says it's one of those vendors hoping Corrections chooses its technology.
So we call that the fingerprint of the drone. So when we can ID the make, model, and serial number, it's called fingerprinting it.
20 U.S. prisons are currently using the company's device, and the hope is to one day be part of the solution in Canada. Benit Brach, CBC News, Pitt Meadows.
As we head to break, here's a look at where the markets closed today. The TSX rose 156 points, the Dow climbed 524, and the dollar traded up to 73.46 cents U.S. We'll be right back. The pandemic caused a serious setback for Canada's long-standing fight to reduce and eliminate tuberculosis. As Alison Northcott tells us, advocates say they want the spotlight turned back on the disease that disproportionately affects Inuit and First Nations communities.
Tuberculosis is a treatable disease that often affects the lungs, and in Canada, it has a disproportionate impact on Indigenous populations. Some areas in the country have seen recent increases in TB, in some cases reversing years of declines. In northern Saskatchewan, the Northern Intertribal Health Authority says among the 33 First Nations communities it works with, there are currently 3 declared outbreaks, and annual cases have climbed.
If we go to 2020, when COVID hit, we had 16 reported cases. And in 2021, we had 50. And 2021, we actually declared 2 outbreaks in 2 of our communities. And last year, we had 72 cases diagnosed of active TB.
When the pandemic hit, Campbell said her entire team had to shift its focus to COVID, and that led to less screening for TB. The Chief Medical Officer of Public Health for Indigenous Services Canada says the pandemic did have an impact on the country's efforts to reduce and eliminate tuberculosis, because in some areas, resources were redirected to the COVID-19 pandemic.
There's been reduction, in the ability, to do contact tracing for TB in some areas as well, for prevention, early diagnosis, early treatment and care. All of those, have contributed to, in some areas, either stalling of the progress made, or in some cases, reversing the downward trend.
Still, Wong says he's confident with a redoubling of efforts that Canada can get back on track, with a focus on testing and the social determinants of health that lead to more cases, things like a lack of adequate housing and access to healthy, affordable food. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Montreal.
Okay, we're just minutes away from puck drop at Scotiabank Arena, where the Leafs have the opportunity to advance to the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. So let's get right back out to Greg Ross, who's at Maple Leaf Square. Greg, describe the mood for us out there.
I'll tell you, right now, Maribel, I am right in the middle of things. And there's a buzz going through this place right now. Don't take it from me, take it from these fans here who are obviously feeling like this could be the opportunity that they've been waiting 19 years for. A chance for the Leafs to finally advance past the first round of the playoffs for the first time since 2004. And I can tell you right now, Maribel, this is about as busy as I've seen it in here. They are shoulder to shoulder. It's packed pretty tightly in here, guys. Are you guys going to be able to stay here for the whole game?
You know what? We put our good shoes on. We're ready to stand. We're all here. We're hydrated. We're screaming and jumping the entire time.
We're not moving a muscle, baby.
There's no room to move a muscle, but I'll tell you this. After this game, if the Leafs are able to win it, you're not going to be going home anytime soon either.
No, we're going to be jumping on cars. We're going to be...
Well, probably don't do that part, but maybe just celebrate downtown.
The Drake course is ending tonight. We're going to be partying all night, baby, all night. Yo, tell Drake to send us some celebration gifts, all right? Let's go.
All right, well, these guys are ready to party. These guys are ready to see the Leafs finally win a playoff series. Maribel, still a long way to go. They have to win the most important game, the most difficult game to win. That's game number 4 in this best-of-7 series. They'll try to do it in game 5 tonight. It's 4 wins. They got to do it in game 5. We'll see if they can do it, Maribel. We'll send it back to you.
Listen, Greg, that place looks ready to explode, so stand by. Thank you. Leafs in 5, that's a new one, Dahlia.
I know, and it's great. Mother Nature's on everyone's side. You have the sunset going down, beautiful sunshine still, and the conditions are still not so bad right now. I mean, it's around 11 degrees, but it will drop sooner or later to about 6 degrees. Still some clouds in sight, but a great time to be outdoors, and it's pretty packed out there. So really, we'll keep everyone warm if they didn't come prepared, but it seems like everyone did come prepared. And then later on tomorrow, it'll be 12 degrees for the daytime high, quite a windy one, up to 33 kilometers an hour of winds just gusting away, especially with that rain mixing in. It'll be pretty dry in the morning on your commute to work. You'll start to see it pick up at around noon and then later at around 3 o'clock and onwards. So if you had any plans for Friday night, now is the time to rethink those plans and move on indoors. So that's for tomorrow. Saturday, very windy conditions as well. We might be seeing winds gusting up to 72 kilometers an hour for Saturday, and consistently 12 degrees on Sunday as well. And then it starts to get a little cooler, trending starting Sunday to Tuesday. In the evening, it will get quite cooler. But as you can see here, really all you need is your umbrella over the weekend, and really reconsider those outdoor plans. And as you can see here, windy conditions as well. Winds gusting up to 41 kilometers an hour. So really what we're expecting over the next few days is rain and a wind. But for today, try and enjoy it while it lasts.
Exactly. And no raining on Leafs Nation tonight, it seems. Thanks, Dahlia.
Thanks.
And thank you for watching. That's our show for you tonight. But before we go, one last look at Maple Leaf Square, where fans have packed the place, because what everyone wants tonight is